Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, where we help dads create a healthier and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude. I am your host, and today is really an exciting and special day for me and for this show. It is our 52nd episode, which means we have been doing this for one full year. And I'll say that it has been unbelievably gratifying. This community has grown in the work, and the people that I've met, like my two guests today, has been absolutely an honor to work with. And so we're going to be chatting today a little bit about just the state of men, particularly dads and divorced dads. And my two guests were two of the most popular podcasts that we had over this last year. And I've so honored, like I said, to have connected with them, and I've stayed in contact and watched the amazing work that they've been doing and the growth that they've had with their work as well. And so I'd like to introduce my first guest, and that's Alain Dumonceaux. He is the founder of the AwakenedMan.net and the Evolving Man podcast. He also has the membership site of the Band of Brothers. And when we got together, Alain, we talked about the 5 pillars of man, which is really a fantastic breakdown of just kind of how to navigate through life as a man. So welcome, Alain. And my other guest is DSO, and he is the founder of dadstartingover.com, and as well as the podcast Dads Starting Over, and the DSO fraternity, a membership site which has all kinds of fantastic, fantastic information and classes and coaching, et cetera. And I've been watching DSO that evolve over the time that I've been watching you too. And I think you said that's grown to a massive amount of people now. So and we're going to talk about creating that community too a little bit later. You're also the author of The Dead Bedroom Fix. Your other book is Now What? A Guide for Men Starting Over in Life After Infidelity, Breakup, and Divorce, as well as I think it was your first book called Red Flags, which is one that I probably need to read because I don't always pay attention to those, and I need to start to. DSO, Alain, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Jude, for having us.
So, fellas, like I said, I'd like to talk about, and first, I want to give some appreciation to each of you, the work that both of you are doing, and I was talking to Alain before this. I've kept in contact and listened to your guys' podcasts and all the information that you put out there on a regular basis, and I'm sincerely appreciative of the work that you do in the men's world, because it is so absolutely necessary and needed. And I think probably we've all seen that in the response that we've got to the work that we're doing. So thank you for the work that you're doing. It's really appreciated.
And thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, my pleasure. So before we start talking about kind of the state of men, if you guys don't mind sharing a little bit about yourself and how you got into this work and kind of what you're doing now, I'd appreciate it. If Alain, you start us off, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I got into doing men's work over the last few years here. It was really, as I started to really think about it, it was probably a 20 to 25 year journey, but it was in the last few years here where some serious life experiences were happening for me. I call them significant emotional events that occurred. And one of them was the loss of my father-in-law. And he was basically my best friend, and we did everything together, hung out. And when that happened, I really felt that I didn't have anywhere to go. You know, for men in Canada, I'm in Canada here in Winnipeg, there isn't anywhere for us to go to talk to people about, to work through some of our challenges. And not only was it affecting me personally, but it was affecting my marriage as well. And so when I found that even though I had buddies, I really didn't have a brotherhood. You know, I didn't have guys that I could lean into to figure stuff out. And so when I saw that there was this gap, that I just knew I needed to do something, needed to figure out a way to help support men that would help them through their growth. Because at some point in our lives, we're going to lose a little bit of our identity and who we are. What we thought we were going to do in our 20s and 30s, maybe isn't what's transpired in our 40s and our 50s. So that's really what the catalyst that got me into doing this men's work.
Yeah, and that's a good point about losing your identity. And what I've found now over this past year and doing this work is during divorce, and a lot of the men listening right now have, divorce is like a breaking open of that and trying to figure out and learn like who you are again, because who you thought you were, it's just a time of reckoning really when you're going through it. So that's fantastic, Elaine. DSO, how about you?
Well, years ago, I was a very comfortable married man with 3 kids.
Weren't we all? Yeah.
And my world was flipped upside down when my now ex-wife said, I've got a replacement for you. See you later. And boy, that just everything, just what was black became white and vice versa. I didn't know which way to go. And very lost, went through a lot of introspection, a lot of inner work. And part of that therapy, if you will, was me writing. And I went online and started blogging and just writing my thoughts on the world of relationships as I saw it in my dating experience and so forth. And I said, I wonder if there's if the URL of Dad Starting Over is available. And there it was, dadstartingover.com. Said, well, hot damn, for like $3 or whatever it was, I got it. And away I went, and I started getting some attention and some emails. And then, every now and then some guy would convince you to talk to him, on the phone or whatever. And somebody would say, you should charge for this. And then I'd get something say, you should write a book about, XYZ. And it happened to be the most popular topic was sex and marriage and my thoughts on the matter. And you should write a book on this. So I did. And that book, The Dead Bedroom Fix, that was my first book. That has been the big, what do you call it? The gateway drug to get into my world. I've had more guys come from that book than anything else. And the most popular version of that book can be found on Audible. And from that, I got him to read another book coaching sessions with myself. And since you and I last spoke, Jude, I've hired 4 guys to help me out. They do coaching. We have a members only portion of the website called the DSO Fraternity that you mentioned. And we have live member meetings 3 to 4 days a week. These guys are hosting the meetings. These guys also do coaching. I continue to write. I have the podcast, and things have been going very well. And that's my story.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's fantastic. I think the sex part of it, or the sexless part of it, maybe, if you will, is one of the top things that I always hear, about divorce or about the relationship. So yeah, as being a segue, I think that's a good one. And on that note, let's talk a little bit about what we have been finding, or what we found over the last year. Obviously, the last year has been very interesting in all manners and respects. But what are you gentlemen finding as one of the biggest challenges for dads out there, divorced dads? DSO?
I say the number one thing that I see with the men that I talk to is jumping into the world of relationships way too soon. And they
guilty.
And you know what they find? Oh my gosh, I found my wife all over again. My ex-wife.
Surprise.
Yeah. And the packaging, the external packaging may look different. She may be 20 years younger, whatever the case may be. But oh wow, here I am again, right back where I was. And invariably the advice I give to guys is just take a break from the women for a while. They're not going anywhere. Take a good year off. What's it going to hurt? And for a lot of men, they discover, wow, I kind of dread the idea of being completely alone in this world. Mm-hmm. And when I don't have a woman by my side, man, that's frightening, and I don't like it. And therefore I'm going to go out and try to fill that hole as quickly as humanly possible. Well, these guys are obviously emotionally broken and going through all the things that they're going through. They're obviously not going to attract the most stable human beings in the world. Yeah. And sure enough, here come all the emotionally unstable women out of the woodwork, and the rest is history. And then we end up having a meeting. A lot of the times I'll talk to a guy and it's, hey, I met this woman and she's amazing and there's no red flags. Trust me, DSO. Everything's great with this one. I'm like, so I'm going to go ahead and pencil you in for 3 months from now and we'll have the breakup meeting. And sure enough, they come back with the tail between their legs and said, oh my God, things got so weird. It was so strange. And horror stories of just, the mental illness just all of a sudden just comes out as soon as they hit a level of comfort. It's like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? And I hear it again and again and again. So if it's the number one thing, it's men, learn to be okay on your own. And you're not necessarily, this is the whole point of this meeting, you're not necessarily on your own per se. There's a brotherhood of men out there that are ready and willing to help you out. It's not like you'll be completely alone in the world. I think a lot of men struggle with, well, maybe I could have like a casual relationship with women. It doesn't necessarily have to go sexual, and it most certainly doesn't necessarily have to go full relationship mode. You could say I met Sally for coffee. I met Brenda. We had a nice dinner together, and this other woman, we clicked really well. And you're still having that, if you want to call it that, feminine energy in your life, right? If that's something you're looking for. But a lot of men lack that mechanism to say, I'm not quite ready to take it to the next level. They just jump right into that and they just find all kinds of trouble.
Right. That's a great point. And I got to confess that, so it's going to be 9 years in July that I've been divorced and I'm newly into a relationship. And seriously, this is really the first time I can say I really am. And look, I'm a little bit slower than the average guy. And, I try to do things as hard as possible, which for me is difficult, but for all y'all that are listening works out because I can share all that with everybody. But, I finally feel like I'm, at a place where it's a healthy place to be able to go through that. So that is such phenomenal advice. If there's one thing that you could say, DSO, as far as advice on how to do that, right? How to avoid it, what would that be? What would that advice, like one thing that you can do to just try to stay away from it? Cause like you're drawn to it like a moth to candle. Yeah.
I guess it would probably be, be an adult. And when you're invariably going to come in contact with women, and invariably there's going to be some type of sexual tension, if you want to call it that, flirtations and so forth. And I think it's perfectly adult thing to say, hey, woman that I seem to be hitting it off with, just to let you know, relationship thing and all that other stuff, it's not happening for me.
Yeah.
I just got divorced X number of months ago. I'm taking some time to myself. I just didn't want to lead you on in any way or let you think that I'm going for that or whatever. I just enjoy our time together. And what a huge amount of respect you'll get from the women that you're interacting with. And what a load off of you that you don't have to play that dumb game, so to speak. You just be yourself and work on yourself. But, well, it's easier said than done.
Right. Well, it's being that authentic person and being true to what it is that you're needing at the time and stating what that is, which for those of us that have been codependent, right, that's sometimes a difficult challenge to be able to do. So that's great advice.
There is nothing more intoxicating to a man than sitting across the table from a pretty woman who just validates the hell out of you.
Right.
Oh, you do this. That's amazing. Oh, that's wonderful. You're so cute and everything else. And the guy's like, well, I need to keep this going for as long as humanly possible. I'm not going to tell her about my kids. I'm not going to tell her about my divorce. And then you become this sneaky little creepy guy who's just kind of, not being an adult. So just let it out right off the bat is what I say.
Yep. Great advice. And I got to say, all of the stuff that I read and listen to from you, it's always such great practical advice. And so I really appreciate that too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Elaine, how about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm seeing that men are really struggling with finding that identity again, as I talked about earlier. I think that, and I like the point that DSO just brought up about jumping quickly into a relationship. Like my divorce happened a little more than 20 years ago. And I didn't take that year off to really find myself. It took a few months off, and lo and behold, I ended up by being married to the woman I am today. But I never took the time to really understand what it is that I want, get clear exactly what I want. I think that's what I find with men in general, is that when you ask them, well, what do you want in a relationship? They can't really tell you more than what the superficial things that they're used to seeing. And you're absolutely right. We generally end up by remarrying or being in relationships with people that we were comfortable with. I like to tease my wife. I said, boy, you sure remind me a lot of my mom. And how true is that? That we end up by marrying people that are similar to what we grew up learning as men. And so I find that men still struggle mightily with really being able to answer the deeper questions of why. Why are they in this relationship? What's important about the relationship for them? How are they validating? Is it all external, or do they have anything internal that's allowing them to stay, solid in who they are as a person? And I find that over this last year, that has been even more problematic with everything else that's been going on in society, and really trying to find your way.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Elaine, is that some practical advice to tell your wife, you're a lot like my mom?
Yeah, I would say,
how does that work?
Taken 25 years to have the courage to say that, and then
okay.
and of course we need to have a good slap after it as well. And so I think it's important though that that's also part of our our relationships. You have to really understand who you're spending time with, and how does that relationship look. And yeah, it definitely would not be something I would come out of the gate with. Boy, you remind me of my mom. That just probably wouldn't go over very well.
Not a first date conversation.
Yeah.
But that's funny. That's interesting because I'm working in a class right now with some gentlemen. We were talking about that last night, and there's a really fantastic book around that, and it's called the Tactical Guide to Women: How Men Can Manage Risk in Dating and Marriage. And it's written by a clinical psychologist here out of Denver, Colorado, where I'm at, named Sean Smith. And what he talks, I'm telling you, I wish this should be required reading for every teenage boy. And then you should read it every year until you get married, because what it talks about is exactly what the both of you described, is really doing that self-introspection about what's going on, what your values and your beliefs are, learning to be authentic and true to who you are, how to communicate those things specifically and directly, and not in a passive aggressive or indirect way, just being, taking stock of everything and all of who you are, and particularly if that is your masculine nature, right? And what your masculine nature is, because a lot of times, and what I'm seeing with boys these days, because I've got 3 daughters that are, going through elementary and middle and high school. So I see the whole range of it, is that boys are not being, I don't want to say taught, but their masculine side is not being nurtured. And so that's creating a lot of confusion. I know that created a lot of confusion for me in my upbringing, because that was something that was flat out denounced. So I always had this issue with my masculine side, which I have of, just a very high masculine nature. And that's just the way it is. But it was always repressed because I was pounded into my brain. So let's talk a little bit about that and those challenges around masculinity and positive masculine roles, DSO.
Sure. I tell you one thing, going back to the mom thing, that I see quite a bit with gentlemen that I talk to. Some are in just god awful, horrible relationships where everyone around them is saying, dude, what are you doing? Get out. Some really bad emotional abuse from the wife and so forth. And there's a lot of personality disorder, red flags going on. And one of the first things I will say to the guy after he just gets done unloading on me for 15 minutes, making the case for let me tell you how bad my wife is. I just sit and listen and say, so tell me about your childhood. What's up there? Because this didn't come out of nowhere. It's not like this is just, oh man, mom and dad were great and I just bad luck picked one. And invariably 100% of the time I will hear some variation of dad was gone. He just worked so much that I rarely saw the man, or he literally took off and went and started family number 2. Or usually that combines with, and I was left with mom and I became her emotional punching bag. Yeah. And there's that uncomfortable term, which I mentioned quite a bit, that emotional incest. I became the surrogate spouse. Mom just unloaded on me about everything. And a lot of the time that involved unloading on me about dad. Yeah. Don't you ever become your dad. Your dad slept around with all these women, your dad, and just painted this picture. And it's on a lot of different levels a really horrible thing for a parent to do, because kids internalize that as, not only do I not want to become that role model for awfulness, my father or whoever it may be, but also I am a product of awfulness. I come
Right.
from terribleness. And a lot of men I talk to have internalized that, and it has manifested itself later in life as kind of this anti-masculine, I need to prop up my feminine side more and more. And they end up where they're at, in kind of a stereotypical, submissive kind of role with a woman who is basically emotionally, if not physically, beating him down day after day.
Right.
And
Right.
very common, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it seems as though with the normalization of divorce and the prevalence of single parenthood, and for the majority of the past decades, it's been single motherhood, right? Because they've been the ones that have been given the majority of the parenting time that we've. It feels like we're seeing, or we're reaping what we've sown, so to speak, over those decades in that time, because that, exactly what you described has happened. And then we now have not only a generation, but generations of men that are trying to work through and figure this out. So again, I'll ask, what do you think is one of the key things that we can do as men, if we can finally recognize, like, for me, it took me years after my divorce to finally stop and pay attention and to start to understand this stuff, right? And I always tell the story, DSO. I don't know if you've ever heard me tell it, about how my 11-year-old, after just spending, it was about a month, about 3 or 4 weeks, that my mom had spent some time with us at our home. She literally had figured out that mom was just like grandma, or grandma was just like mom. And she talked, she taught, she asked me about it one morning, and it like literally floored me. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, how grandma's acting is just like how mommy acts. And I'm like, oh my God, you're 11. Jesus, I'm in my 40s and I hadn't figured that out yet. So, if we finally take the time and figure that stuff out, what is one of the first things we can do to start moving back towards a healthier perspective around that?
I think it's really simple. Be around men more.
Yeah.
That kind of solves a lot of issues, doesn't it? I feel so much more energized and just at a different wavelength when I'm around men doing, quote, manly type things.
Yeah.
Boy, the energy was so different when I used to be in the corporate world and I sat in an office with 5 women. Versus getting.
Sorry.
Yes. That's a whole podcast in itself.
Yeah. Right.
But versus, just hanging out with a dude and chatting over beers.
Right.
It's just, and the way we've engineered our lives these days, especially us guys, post-divorce and so forth, there's just not a whole lot of time for guy time.
Yeah.
When I, as divorced man, have a rare weekend free, and I call up my friend Todd or whoever and say, hey, this evening I got free time. You want to get together and eat beer, wings, typical man thing. 9 times out of 10, it's, dude, I got a kid thing. I got a soccer thing. I'm over in Illinois driving around to soccer tournaments. I'm doing that. No problem. So weeks, months go by, and it's not uncommon for men to say, I haven't been in contact with another man for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds simple, but I think that it has a cascading effect on men of not having that camaraderie, that we're human beings. You have to have some kind of socialization, and it's a different flavor of socialization when it's with men. And I think we will find that guys who have regular contact with men on a regular basis, in a variety of different formats, are invariably mentally healthier. Maybe that's oversimplifying it, but that's what I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I find that a lot with the divorced dads, because their whole world is upside down and changing, and they're needing to re-engage with men. But it feels like there's also just an overarching isolation in society with men in general. We kind of get into our families, and like you said, we got kid stuff, we've got work stuff, we've got family stuff, and then our stuff kind of goes to the end. So Alain, can you speak to a little bit about community? Because I know you've put together the Band of Brothers and you do a lot of that work just as DSO and I do, of that, finding and creating the community, but also finding that community and how that can be helpful.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I totally agree with what DSO is saying there. I think it's important for us to make a distinction between having a group of boys or dudes that we hang out with, and having a community or a brotherhood.
Yeah.
We're beyond the talk of booze, boobs, and babes, right? If we get past that type of discussion, and we really get into things that are important about what's going on in our lives. And I think these are hard conversations for men to have, because we're not used to, having that touchy-feely, and so we don't want to deal with our stuff. And I think it's important to find that sense of brotherhood and community where you can start to talk about the things that are going on, that you're having trouble in your marriage and what's going on about it. And if it is so much that she's just like your mom, so what are the things are you doing about it? And I find that when you get around with a bunch of men, it's really hard to not take responsibility for your actions, because someone's going to call you on it, right?
Yeah.
At least in my group, you're going to get called on, hey man, you're not really showing up here.
Yeah.
And what I work with the guys in is really getting to level 5 type of conversation. And level 5 is where you're being completely vulnerable and open to what's really going on. And you're expressing your feelings and your opinions and your beliefs on a particular subject. And that doesn't mean we all agree with what's being said. That's for sure not the case. But the point is that the practice is to get out of that comfort zone of being, well, I can't really say that, I can't really be engaged. And you just can't do that in a mixed group. But you can do that if you're in an environment, a brotherhood with men who all have the same goal and purpose in mind, and all have the same idea about being the best man that they can show up in life for, whether that's husband, father, brother, whatever it is that you're, business person, whatever it is that you're trying to do, that you elevate how you show up and really start to take responsibility.
Right. That's, Alain, one of the things that I do appreciate in following your stuff since we met is that it's always so heart-centered and heartfelt and heart-driven. And I really appreciate that. And what you just spoke to also, which is, taking it, what I understood you say is taking it to the next level, right? It's doing good things and doing manly things and getting back into that to get back into tune with your masculine nature, but also that there's going to be there's going to be a deepening of your understanding of who you are. And this is something that, so is our dynamic has changed from agricultural to industrial, the post-industrial. We've kind of lost that mentorship type of relationship that we may have had with grandfathers and fathers working, together, and then, sharing. And so by doing this, and that's where the communities, the community stuff, and finding a community like the DSO fraternity or the Band of Brothers or the group work that we do with the Divorced Dads, it's absolutely amazing to watch, because, for instance, the first time in a meeting that one of the men will say, I was just so broken down last night, I cried myself to sleep and I was curled up in bed. You just hear a collective sigh of like, oh man, really? Yeah, that was me too, right? And so you kind of like breaks through all this, these masks, if you will, that we have, and it helps us to deepen that, which then, helps us to do the growth and understand and get to that, to understand that masculinity and how that's then again more helpful in a relationship. And
yeah, absolutely. I think we have to, it's really about, living in our totality, accepting and being okay with all the kinds of emotions that we live with, and not suppressing it, because we spend so much time of our lives suppressing our emotions, and you can't do that. You can't say this. And I think when we become so accustomed to it now, that it's hard for us to be able to share and express and really truly deal with the stuff that's going on in our lives. And when we get that chance to do that, like you're saying, there is a huge sigh of relief, because you can look at that guy and go, man, I totally get where you're coming from. And I thought I was the only guy that had that feeling or ever thought of that. And so I think it's so important, the work that all of us are doing, that we find our way into helping men find their way in their life and in how they show up.
Right. Well, and on that point of getting in touch with your emotions and feelings, one of the ones that have finally embraced, and DSO, I'd love to hear about your thoughts on this, is the writing, is the journaling, in it being something that's it's therapeutic, right? Getting those thoughts down on paper. So talk to us about that, and maybe give the guys like me that took so long, it was so hard to crack this, some like a tip on how to get into that. Yeah. So, I mean, it literally took me years and years and years to finally get, and now I'm like, God, this is, wasn't I not doing this earlier?
The writing in particular. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
This isn't something that I had a grand epiphany or I learned that you need to start writing. It's something I always did ever since I was a kid. I liked writing. So, bit of a cheat there. It was just kind of one of my default go-tos. I was always kind of a creative kid. So art, whether, with pastels, paintings, charcoal, whatever it may be, as well as writing, as well as music, that's just kind of me. So I wasn't one to bottle up, and I really wasn't one to say, let me go and empty emotionally on other people as well, verbally. So I have to have some kind of outlet for that. There's a lot of guys that I talk to, and this is kind of going off topic, but it may be something for discussion, is that they, and a lot of these guys came from the single mother households that we talked about earlier. They feel that they need to emote verbally to the woman in their life.
Right.
And if they don't, they think that's, or if someone comes to them and says, you need to ease up on emotionally vomiting on your wife, she's not able to process it. And after doing it so many times, she's starting to lose respect for you. And a lot of men take that very hard. Like, I should be able to say and do whatever the hell I want with my wife. That's what she's there for. I should be able to emote to her. Besides, and this is the key, she emotes to me all the damn time. Why can't I do it in reverse? And one of the things I tell the guy is, it's interesting that you have such a strong pull towards your wife that you want to emote to her, that you're getting angry about the fact that you can't do it. I think that's something that a little odd that you need to look at. Where does that come from? And why don't you channel that in other ways, such as writing, journaling, put it out on a piece of paper just for you to see. If eventually you want some therapist or something to see it, you can say, here you go, therapist, look what I've been thinking for the last year. That's helpful. Or talk about it with other guys, but not necessarily with the woman in your life. That's not what they're there for. They're not your mommy.
Right.
Which I think this all goes back to, doesn't it? So,
yeah,
but to me, just a default way of dealing with my inner turmoil, if you will.
Yeah, that's great. And that's, it's funny you brought up that point. We were having this conversation in class last night, is your woman or your wife does not have to be everything to you all of the time. Right. She doesn't have to, she shouldn't be your therapist and lover and best friend and soulmate and, and business partner and everything else. It's like, that's not a recipe for a healthy and successful relationship.
But I tell you, that's how we've sold marriage.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
It's not necessarily fair to her or to anyone, that you need to be my bestest buddy in the whole wide world and my lover. Right. And you have to want me at all times. And be my emotional punching bag and my therapist and my caregiver if I were to get sick. But Jesus, that's a lot of pressure to put on one human being.
Yeah, it's insane. But it's, again, the Disneyfication of romantic love and what it's supposed to be. Problem is we never see the sequel to all those movies, right?
That's right.
And it's not a Disney movie anymore.
Yeah, right. It then becomes all of our men's groups.
Yeah.
We should just record those and we can make a movie, and that's the sequel. However, it's just not going to sell well. Let's talk about what a point you just brought up. Also, a DSO is that the creativity and the masculinity and the creativity, because this is something we talk about, and you had Suzanne Velker on your show. Venker, yeah. Yes. And she talks a lot about this masculine, feminine natures and energies, right? I call them energies, masculine, feminine, and energies, and how those interact together. And if you will, just for a point of reference, we'll just describe to the audience that it's just like the poles in a magnet. The positives and negatives are going to attract stronger and be a stronger bond, as opposed to if the positives and positives and the negatives and negatives were hitting, they kind of, you know, push each other apart. But let's talk about that within the context of how you can be masculine and be really creative too. Like the example I always use is, you know, there's the Tom Brady's, the athletes, and then there's the princes and the rock stars that, you know, nobody could say he was not a stud, right? Or any of these rock stars aren't, you know, or have a immense amount of masculine nature. But how their pursuit of something that they, you know, the drive and that masculine nature behind creativity, because it often gets convoluted that, you know, being creative or sensitive or anything like that, or a poet or a writer, is not masculine, and that's just totally off mark.
Yeah, I've never been one of those guys that was like, here are the cards you've been dealt. You're a man, which means you must follow the following. You know, football. You talked about beer and wings earlier. Yeah, I have that side of me, but I'm also very much in touch with my quote unquote feminine side, if you want to call it that, which is I like the creative side of it. I'm big into animals, for example. You know, a cat can't go by, but I'm not picking the thing up and schmoozing all over it. It's just who I am. I like babies, you know, so kill me. I like art, photography that I mentioned before, music. Prince, you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
What a perfect example of, if you just visually looked at that man, you're like, oh yeah, he's in touch with his feminine side. All right. There were years where people weren't quite sure what the hell Prince was all about. What's going on there? We saw Purple Rain. We're like, I still don't know what the hell's going on there. But I was a huge Prince fan. But that was the guy who's just like, no, I'm masculine, but I'm just doing it my own way. And talk about a guy who had a mission, and talk about a guy who had undeniable amount of talent.
Yep.
And he had to let it out, all that energy and so forth. And we can talk about a guy who probably had a conga line of women waiting for him too.
Oh, right.
And I don't think that's a coincidence. He was, and physically, people know Prince was 5 foot something. I don't even know. He was very, very short.
Yeah, he was like 5'8", I think. Yeah.
If that, in heels probably.
Yeah.
And so here's this frail little guy who just did his own thing, and the world rewarded him for it. He was very much his own dude. So there are guys that are very much wired towards, I like guns, I like hot rods, and you know, that stereotypical manly thing. And no, I don't play an instrument. No, the art thing. And God bless them, more power to them. But I've never really identified with that. I can certainly, I'm attracted to some of that, but to say that's my identity, that's who I am. No, I don't get it. And I don't see for guys that are more in touch with their quote feminine side. Hey, fine with me, more power to you. Right. So that polarization of, you know, it's story as old as time, the yin and yang. You look at the religious, the mythologies of Adam and Eve and so forth. And this is the polarization thing. It's something that's been recognized forever and ever. So there is something to you're feminine, you're masculine. And how do we define that? Yeah. Well, especially in today's day and age, that is getting more and more blurred, isn't it?
Oh boy.
And I think what we're finding, and Susan is a admitted conservative, and in the more conservative political world, they will say the more we blur those lines, the more trouble it causes, the more chaos erupts.
Yeah.
And I think they have a point. So there's some middle ground there. We can't, you know, I don't know what to think about it half the time, to be honest with you.
It is. Subject. It is kind of confusing, and it seems like it's maybe swung so far to the other end of the spectrum. And perhaps maybe, Alain, you can speak to this, is maybe, and maybe how do we get it to swing back to the middle where, you know, I feel like men haven't changed all that much, but women have really, you know, they've gone through a time period now here for maybe the last half century of immense amount of change, from, you know, their standing in the world to, you know, being in the workplace. And maybe, you know, there's going to be a time where we come back to the center and we're able to find that nice balance between the masculine and feminine and really understand it. Alain,
Yeah, I think what's important is that, and what I really like about the example of Prince is that he lived who he was as a man. And while others of us could look at him, and like DSO is referring to, you look at Prince, you wonder, well, what is he like? What's he trying to do? But you knew that he was authentic, and I think that's the problem, is that we are blurring this line. And for us, and I really struggle with the labels of feminine and masculine, although there are essences in that part of our archetypes. But really, it's about how we're expressing ourselves. And as men, we need to learn how to go back to expressing and stop shunning ourselves from how we're expressing it. And like I just read, I was looking at an article this morning here, getting ready with the podcast, and there's A-Rod's now going to start his own line of men's makeup. Now, A-Rod's a good-looking dude. Maybe that works well for him. I'm just not sure I'm going to go out and buy men's makeup for me. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm going to draw the line there.
Yeah, I think I have to say that I probably won't be in that department.
I won't be in my department, but you can see that the guy is living who he is, right? He's a business guy. He sees an opportunity for a market, and he's going to go live it. No different than Prince or these rock stars or these other folks. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to get across, is that, are we living truly who we are? And are we living authentically and speaking who we are? And I think too many times, and I'm really guilty at this, is that I don't express exactly my values and the virtues that are important to me. And I think that's what we need to do more of as men. And that doesn't mean that we discount somebody else's, but it does say that I know what I stand for and what I won't stand for. And I think that's the key to getting this back into alignment.
Right. What do you feel prohibits a man from being truly authentic?
I think it can be the community or the environment that he's in. Where it could be in a workplace. There's lots of talk. I'm in Canada here. We're very much about diversity and inclusion. I think that's important to bring in. But when it comes to a point where diversity and inclusion also suppresses what you can say or do, becomes problematic. And I think it's a tightrope that we walk. And I think it's important that we recognize that while we need to look at how we can raise a level of everyone, that we can't lose personal sovereignty over that either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about you? What do you think, DSO, to your question?
What was my question?
What prevents us from being authentic?
That's right. Yeah. So what prevents us?
It was a great question.
Thank you. So, boy, that's a big question. For a lot of men that I talk to, I can only give you my narrow wheelhouse of expertise, my anecdotal experience here, but the men I talk to post-divorce, or they're in the middle of trying to rev up their marriage again. And I'll often hear themes of, I think and feel the following, fill in the blank, but I'm concerned that will be unattractive. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned that the women in the world won't like me for this, to which I say, you're still not there, dude. And there being the point of where you just don't give a crap. Right. That is who I am. Take it or leave it. You don't like it? Hey, shake hands. More power to you, sister. Go find one that you will like. And with that attitude, you'll find that the world just ends up respecting you more. Right. And what's funny is that if you are in fact an attractive, all around good dude, you will find that the women kind of mold themselves to fit your shape, so to speak. So no, I'm more into opera versus football. If you're one of those guys, guess what you're going to find? The women that are into, yeah, I like opera too. I'll go with opera with you. Right. From my perspective, what prohibits a lot of guys from doing that is I just don't think the rest of the world, women specifically, will like me for it, which is a very sad, low self-esteem. And again, all comes back from childhood, all those little issues.
Right. And that's kind of the point I was getting to with the masculine and feminine nature and being masculine, is that it's not about what you're doing or who you are, or what you're interested in. It's that you have some meaning and you have identified, some vision and direction for your life. And you're actually working towards that, whether it's writing or like I love the Prince example too. I was a huge fan as well, but it's like this guy, you look at him not in the context of what he's doing, and you're like, oh, interesting. He's very feminine, but man, the guy was driven and he made some awesome music and he did some awesome creative stuff. And so, and that's what is attractive. And it's that if I were to say one tip is create that awesome life that you want. And Dr. Robert Glover talks about this a lot, the author of No More Mr. Nice Guys. Create that awesome life. So first identify who you are and understand who you are, and then create that awesome life that you want. And then, like you said, DSO, you're going to be amazed at who's going to come around and want to be, like Dr. Glover says, that icing on your cake, right? And that's not to diminish women, but that's to say that they're going to enhance and be a part of and join together with in that awesome life that you have created. But it's incumbent upon us, and it's natural with our, the masculine natures to want to create and have that vision and purpose and drive.
Very good. Exactly.
Outstanding.
Yeah. Wow, we solved it. That's it. Show's over. 1 year podcast. I'm going to shut it down. We figured it all out right there. That was succinct, and that's done.
It's all downhill from here.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, fellas, so if you share a little bit to wrap up here about what you've got going on in your communities and how the listeners can reach out and connect with you. And I'm just going to say up front here, everybody who's listening, connect with each of these gentlemen, and the stuff that they're putting out there and the expertise that they're sharing is absolutely amazing and golden, and you're going to be better off for connecting. So that's my plug right off the bat. But DSO, tell us what you got going on and how they can connect.
Yeah, the best way to connect is go to the website, dadstartingover.com. I have the contact forms on there. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can do so there, or you can email me at dso@dadstartingover.com. But from there, you can spend weeks reading articles, listening to podcast episodes. And if you want to kick things up a notch, you can join our members only group, which is called the DSO fraternity that we mentioned before. And this is, we meet men from all over the world, literally meet on Zoom 3 to 4 times a week. I have guys who host these meetings. We have coaching, which is considerably discounted for DSO fraternity members. You can choose between myself and the 4 other guys. There are DSO fraternity only podcasts. You have access to my books. You can download my books in PDF format, or you can listen to them via your podcast app on your phone. Again, this is for the members only. So any book I have now or that's coming out in the future, it's thrown in as part of the fraternity. What else do we have? Oh, we have discussion groups that are for now, but soon, hopefully, fingers crossed, moving off of Facebook. We have private Facebook groups. Nice. That's we've learned is a royal pain in the butt dealing with Facebook. Somebody says a dirty word in there and they kick them out. It's a major headache. So hope to get off that soon. But we have 3 different private groups, and those are active 24/7. You can get on any time of the day because we have guys from all over the world, Australia, wherever, that are getting on there and talking about a variety of different issues. And we hear from a lot of these guys say the same thing. It's so nice to be able to talk to other men about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm pumping out enough content. We're having enough meetings. All the meetings are archived. So if you miss a meeting, you can listen to it recorded on your phone, on your podcast app. So again, as soon as you join the frat, you can set aside weeks and just take in all the information, and more keeps coming in behind it. So it's good fuel for discussion for the men. And it's been a very, very rewarding and awesome thing to be a part of, for sure.
Awesome. That's phenomenal. Congratulations on the
Thank
growth.
you. Thank you.
That's amazing. Elaine, how about you?
Yeah, for sure. And well done, DSO. That's outstanding work you're doing there.
Thank you.
For my exact same idea, go to the website, the awakenman.net, and on there, you'll see the very first page is all about a 3-step process to get involved. So first thing we want you to do is to start engaging in our content. That will be in the form of the Evolving Man podcast. So get involved with that. Then you can look to the next step would be to join our brotherhood. It's the Band of Brothers. So we're just in a bit of, I'm in a bit of place right now. I'm retooling it. So we dubbed 2021 as the reclaim, retool, and respond year. So we're doing exactly that work right now. And so we're doing some of that work. And then the other way you can really get involved and dive in deeper is I created the Heroes Quest, which is a 90-day challenge that men get to participate in. It has some coaching built in there with myself. And we get an opportunity to focus on one key aspect of their life to work on over the next 90 days. So those are ways to get involved. You can find it all at theawakenman.net.
That's awesome. And I'll just reiterate, connect with them. And sometimes people ask me, well, why do you have other coaches or other men, men that are doing men's work? And isn't that, drawing or pulling from your audience? And the answer is no. Like, each one of us has stuff that we can contribute, and each one of us might have something different that can contribute to one of the men that's listening out there. I can't help everybody. None of us can help everybody or be everything to everybody. So that's why I suggest, get connected with DSO, get connected with Elaine, see what resonates. Maybe something is going to help. Maybe they're going to lead you to something else, but get connected, get involved in that community, because I know it's a labor of love for you guys, and to see your success makes me so happy. And it just expands and expounds and just continues to go on and on with more men and helping more men. And share this. So the last thing I'll say is share this. Everybody that's listening, share this with your friends, share it on social media, go and like our podcasts and our pages. And, that's just going to spread more word, and it's going to also help other men. So we're going to be paying it forward as you do that. So, gentlemen, I am sincerely honored that you were here today, and I'm so grateful for all the work that you're doing. And I look forward to us keeping in touch and continuing the work that we're all doing.
Keep up the great work, Jude. Doing awesome work.
Thank you for all you do. Appreciate you a great deal.
Take care.
All right.
Take care.